The thing that I really love about Inge and the circle is I've never seen a circle so devoted to their medium. Recently, practically the whole circle travelled to New Zealand, and they spent a whole week in seclusion, sitting twice a day, really learning how, with communicating with the spirit team. And I think there's a lot of things that have come out of it that are going to be useful to other physical mediumship teams. That's why I thought, well, this is too useful not to share. And we have Garry with us tonight as well. And we also have a number of Garry's circle here who are also with them in. Could you put up your hand, please, those who are members of Garry's circle who travel to New Zealand? We've got Deb Selway, we've got Eddie Denzis, we've got Cindy, we've got Jill, who came from England to be part of all of this. So, Inge, just briefly outline what happened in New Zealand, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so for me it is a lot now that I can get the impression what they want to do without having Garry close by. They have learned that if something needs to be done, that I get an impression. And so like instead, like writing about past issues, obviously we have had, they will say to me, stop writing, you're building up strong resistance and that makes it all worse, or write about this, or I get non-stop now input from where we're going. So suddenly I had the idea to go and do a week just somewhere where it's really boring. It was really boring, like going to a place where we're not distracted and maybe just help them achieve what they want to achieve, because Garry's team, the outcome they have set from the beginning was that they want to have loved ones again materialize in the seance room. And I actually always have asked, why is it they could do it 50 years ago? Is it the electronics? Is it this? Is it that? Is the other? It is actually the home circles what the problem is these days. I believe that's what it is. So we went to Wellington, and we were in a house where we all stayed together. And they let us have, and I told them what we were doing, because and so they let us block out a big bedroom they had there, and then we had the opportunity to, whenever we wanted to go into that room, we could use that room the whole 9 days. And so we set it up as a seance room, so people of the circle would go in there to sit, or others sit for them. Then in the morning we get a briefing from Jimmy, what we wanted to do. It was very much about what we wanted to do, what we wanted to see, what we want to experience, what we don't understand. And so when we got there, we had a briefing that first day. And then they were saying that actually the inspiration to go and do this week was very much also about the circle. It was not only about the medium. So he said, okay, because as we go forward now with this medium, we will utilize the energy and the circle much, much more. So we had then a time where we could then decide what we wanted to learn and what we wanted to learn about. And because we hadn't thought of it, because we come from the place really, we sit for that team, we do what that team requires, and it had never, it hadn't been about us, so it was quite difficult to put into words what we wanted to experience. And so we talked, because we get yeah, in service is not the word. I don't know. We get lectures, so to speak, about different subjects. So we were then saying we wanted to know apports, we wanted to know about the difference between when spirit is working and cryptoplasm, which means when we're working the energy and interfere with what spirit is doing. We wanted to know about the voice boxes. We wanted to know about the veil, about Mrs. Barnaby. So we had all these, or we wanted to know the difference between when it is the medium's form and when it is the etheric form in the room. And so they said, oh, well, let's see, it's a long list, let's see what we can do. And actually they addressed everything of that, every point in that week. Our Metas for Meta was another one. So they actually went through the week and at one point or another addressed everything we wanted to learn, which was really cool, like really cool. So, in the last sitting, I just have the last sitting here on the screen. The last sitting, they put a lot of things where what they had worked with during the week, they put it together. In the middle of the week, at one stage, I know that my dad, and because I can hear him at times, I know that he always wanted to be part of my life now. And so during the week, they were using a voice box, and my dad started speaking through the voice box. I was a bit excited, and it still was hard to understand. And so then they were saying for us to understand that they actually use at a moment in that week, they used Gary's ectoplasm and they used a sitter's voice box. And so that was really interesting. And so she said, thank God they said that, because I could feel it, you know. So I guess she didn't want to say, hey, I can feel this. Yes, so they're working with the circle and the medium together. And so the last sitting was, during the last sitting, at the beginning, we had the experiment where they let us stand close to the cabinet, and then they knock through the medium's form, and then I open the cabinet for 20 seconds. And so to give you an idea what we then experienced, the first time there was an it's like an ectoplasmic sheet, but it seems a little bit thinner than that. And it was coming from the top of the cabinet, and it was maybe, say, this wide, and it was hanging on the medium's head, like about on the medium's head, and the ectoplasm was coming from his right ear. And then the second time we opened it, the veil, we call it the veil, or they call it the veil, had gone all the way across the cabinet, but was still maybe up to here, but it was all behind him, and it looks like a curtain, and it's just moving, like expanding. And then like 10 seconds later, when we opened it, it was from the ceiling, and it looked like it had to form into shape of a big person, like nearly up to the ceiling, very wide, and just an outline of that. And then and yeah, again, we could notice it was from the right ear. Then the next time it covered the medium, it was like on his lap, it was from the ear, and it was all over him. And then the last time we opened it, it just had covered the chair, everything. That whole person was ectoplasm, like the tent was full of ectoplasm. And you see, it's really hard from the recording, because everybody goes, oh my God, look at this. You see, everybody is talking. We need to work on that, because it's then hard to understand. So yeah, that session was about the veil. So we could see how it is built, how it grows. We could see what their plan is to have a spirit person materialize behind the medium in the cabinet. And then the next one was the voice box. But it was interesting because we heard someone going, hello, how are you? And we all going, yeah, hi, you know. And then Jimmy goes, that's not for you. That voice is not for you. They're working on an experiment, another experiment. So just leave him. Just leave him. And so then we were, Cindy was saying, because we were sitting on this side, the cabinet is here. Cindy goes, we had blue light on, like nearly the whole set was blue light on. So Cindy was going, I see a light at the end of the cabinet. I see a light. And I go, no, it can't be. There's no light in here. And then, other than the blue light. And then we realized that they had actually moved the tent and turned it and put the opening against the back wall. And so when they build large amount of ectoplasm, I have experienced with Kai before a couple of times, sitting next to the cabinet, that when I could look into the curtain with Kai, it was super bright in the cabinet, like you have a light on, but not what hurts your eyes, but really bright. And so I guess that's what we were experiencing when we could see the light and the back of the cabinet on the wall. And so then a form walked out, was about, I don't know, maybe my height 5'7", or a bit less, I can't say exactly, and but very, very slim. And walked out on my side. So because I'm sitting here and the cabinet is here, Cindy and I just watching it. And then this side could see them. The other side obviously couldn't. And the form came forward, came to the light, bent down on the light, so we could see it more clearly, then walked back. And I was watching as the legs were going. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, they're showing me that she is materialized with her legs, because I have seen other materializations where there really is only the head and the shoulders and then the drapes just hang. And so, and then I was looking for feet. I couldn't see any feet, and I was close enough to see. I just saw the legs going, like with a woman with a really long dress on. And so what happened with her legs, I can't even remember, man. So she just walked forward and backwards, so we could see her, came back to the light, moved back to the wall, came back to the light. And then the others on the other side were going, hey, we can't see anything, we can't see anything. So then she walked backwards, must have gone across the back, because turned out on the other side. And she turned out on the other side, and a sitter Jen was with the music just opposite me on the other side of the cabinet. She then came and seemed to walk towards Eddie's way, like past Jen, but stopped. And now I know from other seances and from other mediums that there is a certain, when they start out with phenomena, there is a certain parameter, yeah, around the medium where the grid is built, where they're built at the beginning, the phenomena. I think it is maybe to learn how they can control it, what they actually can do with it, how it affects the energy. And so it seemed she was unable to move any further. So then she moved to the front of the cabinet, then she was kneeling. Was it this one? Yes. She was kneeling at the front of the cabinet. She went to the light again. She lifted her arm, and then Eddie's side could see, because the light was here, could see through the veil and see a very skinny arm and a hand. Then she moved back into the cabinet. Okay, that was... I hope I haven't, it's so much writing. I hope I haven't forgotten anything, but I don't think I did. And then, yes, so then somebody started speaking again, practicing, and we could hear practicing through the trumpet. And then he talked about talked about that, and then yes, so and then about maybe, I don't know, not long, maybe 3 minutes or something, then we heard thumping like heavy shoes, and then on Jen's side opposite me, a form came out, and it seemed like a male because it was very wide and very tall. From me, it looked very tall. And then I could watch the shoulders grow. I found that very interesting. So he then walked over. That became very, Jimmy had said, once the first ones are loved ones, and then they see where they go with that, and then they would use a personality who is already very used in other circles, I believe, maybe, but very used to working this way, working with the veil and, you know, moving away from the cabinet. So this personality then came over from Jen's side, over to Karen next to Cindy, and he put two hands on their knees, and then he bent forward. So because we can't move when that is happening, you know, I'm just going, what is happening? And so he put his face really close. Kevin said, I thought he'd give me a kiss, like that close. And so Karen recognized the energy, and yeah, she got very upset, but she was very good. She just said really, really still. You just could hear her cry. And then the form moved backwards, a little bit backwards into the room, and then moved over to Jill and Deb, where Jill said all she could see of that veil was a hazy head, like the head form, but then very hazy. I'm not quite sure what Deb saw. She can say that in a minute. So, but that was our materialization till that. Then he came around, he did the same to Jen, came really, really close to her. And interesting what was that I was looking straight ahead, and Jen was saying, oh my God, he's nearly in my face, so close, so close. And I was thinking, all I can see is a black box. Like, I couldn't see Jen, I could see something black, but I couldn't see the form we had seen before. I couldn't. And because it was so much happening in the week, like, we were talking all about all the things that's happening and So on Monday morning, when I woke up, just when I woke up, I hear Jill's voice in my head saying, Jen, what are you seeing? And I go, why do you tell me this? And it was just, think about it. And I go, oh my God, yes. When I saw the form going to Jen, I didn't see the form. I only saw a dark shape. And so then I got all the others out of bed. We had a discussion about what we saw there. And so we realized that that personality influences the veil to show us what they want to show us. But it is really just the veil. They are not, they are not full. He wasn't fully materialized with everything on it, like was covered in the back. Wasn't. It was just the front. So he then, after he had been to Jen, he went to the front of the cabinet. And you see, I had missed that night. I just missed what they wanted to show me there. And he was standing in front of the cabinet and lifted, like this ectoplasmic gown thing. He lifted it off, like opening a coat, lifted it off like this, and there was nothing underneath. It was just like it was hanging on his shoulders, and there was nothing underneath. So that was very important, but I had actually missed it until they told me on Monday morning. So that was our materializations.
All right, look, we'll have a break there, Inge. Thank you so much. And the enthusiasm is amazing.
Oh, sorry, I get on the wall.
I think it's just what a wonderful idea for the whole circle to go away together and just have
Well,
a
it wasn't
week.
my idea, obviously, but yeah.
It was, just have a week of just massive experience. I'd like to ask some of the other circle members to tell us their highlights of the week. Jill, let's talk. Let's have you first.
Well, first of all, thanks, Inge. I would never have been able to have remembered so much detail had you not transcribed everything. So well done, you. It was, well, I couldn't even tell you what happened on what days. It was just a massive big blur. It just rolled into one. I had some really good highlights. Because we were learning as well, which is really good. The Jimmy's team, they were working with us too. It's part of our development as well. They showed us the control. You know, when you think who is actually in control of the energy, and we did an experiment or we practiced who is actually in control. And so, in the days in the moments where we weren't with Jimmy, we worked in a little group ourselves. And we worked in pairs, sat around a table, building that energy and sending it around. So we were really sort of in that energy all the time. And we did an experiment where in the morning and in the afternoon, so we could see the difference. And we worked with what Jimmy referred to as cryptoplasm. You're going to have to ask for the better explanation of what cryptoplasm is. But I do believe that the cryptoplasm is the energy that we've built up, but we use ourselves. It's not spirit using it. So, for instance, in the morning, we were building up our energy. We weren't bringing in our teams, or there was no influence at all. It was just you sitting there, pushing our energy around so that we were building up the energy, our own energy. Does that make sense? So our own energy. And what was really amazing is because we'd been sitting this way for a few days, when we actually, with the intention of building our own energy, not in spirit influencing or coming in, I could actually start to feel that power. So I was sitting in the morning in this beautiful power, but it was my power, which I started to realize. I always thought when I was building power, there was spirit near and everything, but it was my power. So I just sat in the power, and you didn't do anything. You just focused on the table. So I had bits and pieces on the table, and the power was building, and I could honestly swear to myself, I thought, do you know, any minute now, I'm going to make that trumpet move. It felt so strong. But anyway, nothing happened, but I was just wallowing in this wonderful power. Now, in the afternoon, we did the same experiment again, where we built a power, we got into that lovely zone, but then I called them in, the team in, got them off the park bench and said, join us, and the team came in, our spirit teams. And I felt the difference in what happens with the power. So I was in the power, just sitting there, not doing anything, and subtly just saying, right, you do it now, you take control of this power. And it was just absolutely wonderful. You really felt this difference. And I'd never subtly noticed that before. And so to physically feel that change and to try and get the understanding of the cryptoplasm, and when spirit are taking control for photoplasm or ectoplasm, it was just a greater understanding that they gave me, should I say. And yes, the materialization. I was one of those people that said, I can't see, Holly Hobbit here in New Zealand by foot. I just felt that I couldn't see half the things because there was so much going on. But obviously, so they repeated, they made sure that you could see. That's what was wonderful with spirit. And so when Inge mentioned about the first form came over to the light to show themselves clearer with the light, with the veil, I noticed that each time, because people were saying, oh, I can see the space, it's wide, it's big, it's pointy, it's doing this, that, and the other, and I couldn't see. So I was watching and I was seeing, but every time I was looking, the face, or the face, the head, did change. So I didn't see sharp features, but I could see that it was growing in size, and then it was tiny, and then it was long. And so I could see now why everybody was shouting different things out, because we were beginning, well, I couldn't see the features as sharp as maybe somebody, but I could see that the head size. When the form went over to Karen, and I was sitting next to Karen on my right side, so I could sense the form coming over, and I could see the form at the beginning, but as the form moved over to Karen, it was out of my peripheral. I couldn't see the form. I could sense the form, and I could hear Karen's emotion, because the form had come to her. And I was thinking, I can't see anything, because I didn't move. We're all sitting like this. And then I could sense the form going back and in front of me. And I could see this haze, this kind of, I couldn't see features, but I could see there was a glow of the head. And then the glow kind of came slightly towards me as if it was bowing to me. And at the same time, a hand went onto my leg, and it felt really large and warm, and sort of just gently pressed down on my leg as it was bowing, this haze, because I couldn't see the features. It was not in my face like Jen, it was just further back. And I sensed, I could hear Deb on the other side of me saying that it was touching her leg as well. And so, yeah. Then when it moved from Deb, again, when the form disappeared, I didn't see anything after that. But I heard Jen really excited. It's in my face, I can blah, blah, and I'm sitting there and I can't see anything. I just thought, well, what is she on about? And I thought, what is she talking? She was really excited. And I said, Jen, what are you seeing? Because I can't see anything. There was just nothing there until eventually it left Jen almost backwards, and then I could see again the robes. Then I saw the form lifted the robes, gathering them almost, and opened their arms up, and the robes were all cascading down. I like that word, cascading down on either side, and you couldn't see part of the middle part of it. It was it was very interesting. But the funny thing was, it was like an everyday event, because we were so enthralled by it that if anybody was listening in, they thought we'd be mad, because we were just so analysing every little thing that was happening. And what was also interesting was the form never turned round, so you saw its back really until it gone to Jen, but it was always in front of you, like you just saw the one side of the veil, unless it wanted to show you on purpose. But as it was going back to the cabinet, it kind of glided backwards, so you just saw that front part.
So it seems that it's sort of like a screen. It's like a screen that they're projecting to.
Yeah. Okay. But only when it wanted to show, when it turned, then you could see the 3D of it all.
Right.
So it's like it wasn't wasting anything by showing you things you're not going to see. Yeah.
That's right. Can we hear from Deb Selway? Deb, what was your experience here?
Oh, many experiences. It was a week just chock-a-block of amazing things. Much has been said about that ectoplasm form on the last day, and I too was totally intrigued and in awe of it. It was an amazing event. The interesting thing, and that's what Jill and Inge was talking about, is that the veil could only be necessarily seen in some directions. So sometimes I could see just the front of the form, but in the back there was nothing. It was just a darkness or a black space. So it's interesting how spirit could actually manipulate that ectoplasmic form in the way that they do, and it's almost as if they're saving energy by not having to do the full suit, So that was amazing. And yes, I had a touch on the knee from that particular manifestation of spirit. The other earlier in the week, I had another beautiful touch, and that was on my face, and there was a form a bit similar to the other form on the last day come around, and I think Karen was the other person who had touch on the face, but the form actually cupped my chin and my hands in their hands and stroked my cheek. It was just such a loving, beautiful experience. And the feel of the hands was really interesting because it was also, I explain it like it's got glycerin over the hands. The hands were physical in form, but it was like a very soft glycerin. And when I went to touch my face earlier, I really couldn't feel it, but on the form I could feel that. So I thought that was really interesting. I couldn't see the face of the form, I could just feel the hands very, very strongly. And it was just a beautiful moment. So the other thing that I thought was really interesting, that the spirit team gave experiments on during the week, and a number of experiments, was matter through matter. One of the first times we had asked that they demonstrate matter through matter for us. So early in the week, after the seance had completed, we went to Garry, who was always cable tied before the event, and Inge cuts off the ends of the cable ties and puts them in a white bucket, and that white bucket was somewhere over the other side of the cabinet somewhere. Anyway, during this particular seance, the cabinet went nuts. I mean, it span and bumped around and did all sorts of interesting things, and it decided that it wanted to use the bucket. So the cabinet itself wobbled itself over to the bucket. It found the bucket. Who knows where it was, because I couldn't see. It was black, dark, but I could see enough because it was also in blue light again. And the bucket, the cabinet stood up a little bit and put it and grabbed the bucket and took the bucket inside of the cabinet. It was really awesome. It was like the whole cabinet was animated, and it took the bucket inside and it tipped it upside down. So there were scraps of cable ties we found afterwards everywhere, and it tipped up the tent so on one corner, so that the corner was on top of the bucket. And it did this because it then, from the cabinet, there was ectoplasm that was coming from the bottom of the cabinet. And in the ectoplasm were two little legs. And it was really amazing because the cabinet was tilted up onto top of this tall bucket on the corner, and we could see the ectoplasm little legs that were forming there. So that was one experiment. But I'm getting to the physical, the matter through matter. So at the end of that particular seance, we went to get Garry from the chair, and there he was. He wasn't actually, he was in his chair but backwards, and Inge put up the photos that we had of that event. He was backwards in his chair. He was, his hands and legs were out of the cable ties. The cable ties were still intact, so they weren't broken. The spirit had somehow utilised those excess cable ties that from the upturned bucket, and put Garry's arms like this on one of the struts at the back of the chair, and his torso was at the back of the chair, and his arms were cable tied to one side of the chair. So that just blew me away. And poor Garry, that he was so tight that there were marks on his arms from those cable ties. Now, I can't explain that. I took photos of the cable ties on the legs. I took photo cable ties on the armchairs. They were fully intact. They were the way that they were presented. The bits and pieces of the cable ties were used on the back of the chair. I don't know how. And there was Garry.
Poor boy.
So, we wanted matter through matter. We got matter through matter.
The highlight for me would have to be the first materialisation. Beforehand, Jimmy asked Jennifer, who was in control of the music, to play the current song on repeat. That song would have significance for one of the sitters. And that song happened to be You'll Never Walk Alone. And then when the materialisation came around to Jen and my side of the cabinet, I was just overcome come with emotion and overwhelmed, and it was a vibration that I haven't felt for 10 years since my wife passed. Next month will be 10 years since she passed, and I just knew it was her and trying to come through. If you ask Jen, is Jen on? I don't know. But I was just a blubbering mess. It was absolutely heartfelt emotion that I could feel. And also during the week, after one of the sessions with the voice box, I was just about ready to go to sleep, and I thought I heard a voice box at the end of the bed, and I listened again, I heard it again, I said hello, and nothing further eventuated. So I asked Jimmy the next morning what it was all about, and he said, yeah, they're just experimenting and showing me stuff that your own development will be involved in. And up until that point in time, I thought I was just a big battery, and the whole week of group sittings just showed me what is possible. And I've now started sitting in a cabinet again myself, and I'm totally amazed at what is happening in the whole scenario. And I'm so looking forward to next month when we sit in England for Garry again.
Right. I'm going to ask Garry just to talk a little bit about his perspective on the week and what it was designed to achieve, and then we'll throw it open for questions. Garry?
Well, I thought it was a holiday at first.
They got you there on false pretenses.
I did not.
So the week was meant to be a continuation of the other experimental stuff we've been doing, which has been going well so far, which is lovely. But what I really liked about the week is it gave them a chance to actually develop themselves, because I know my team's always been about that if they can produce it with me, they want to produce it with others, and that should be the point. And it should be about us coming together. And although people develop in different ways and may produce phenomena in different ways, we should all be able to come together and work and understand the fundamentals behind it, so that we can all sit as a group and discover, well, how can we replicate this phenomena with other people and get other people to do it, rather than we've only got 3 physical mediums in the world, so everyone has to go and see them until they die.
Right. So what do you see as the aim of your circle? What have you learnt from the spirit team?
So my spirit team seem to be very much focused on education. So they love to have questions, asking them not just to show you the phenomena, but to ask questions about how does it all happen? How can it be reproduced? What are the fundamentals behind it? I know their big thing at the moment is about learning who's in control of the energy. And I think that's something that does need to be looked at with physical, with trance, with mediumship, because it does have to filter through our mind. Our mind has to work with it. And there is a lot of times when information coming through or energy coming through is being filtered or influenced by our minds, which can happen. But it's kind of a taboo subject, so no one wants to talk about it. But table tipping is a great example where you can have spirit in control to begin with, and then everyone gets excited, and because everyone's got excited, they start to push the table through, say, micro movements, and then spirit lost control. But spirit then still get the blame for anything else that then continues to come through when spirit are no longer in control. And that's no different from a mental medium who starts with, I've got your dad here, and then drops into the psychic and completely forgets about dad. So then dad gets the blame for anything else that medium gets psychically. So, if I use myself as an example, so when I would sit, if me and my ex-partner would have an argument the day of the seance, even if I thought I had dealt with the argument, that night in the seance, the phenomena would either be limited or we'd have someone be sick. And that was purely just because that argument must have still been on my mind. And this is one of the reasons why the old school teaching is that you're not supposed to be friends with your circle members, or they're not supposed to be friends with each other. Because in theory, if they disliked each other or they had an argument, they would in theory bring that into the energy and it would come out in the energy. I think personally you have a much better connection being friends with your home circle, and you should be able to overcome things like that. And it's one of the reasons why we say in seances as well to go in with no expectation. Because if you want something to happen, you're going to influence the energy. And you could either change what spirit wants to do, or make spirit have to go down a different route that they ideally wanted to go.
Fantastic. Now, look, I think we'll throw that open to questions because we've got a lot of expertise here, and I'd particularly like to hear questions to start off with, from Craig and from Rob, who are going through development at the moment.
I'm sure Rob is going to have some questions for you. That's very exciting. It's wonderful what you're doing, and there are things that you're learning that are going to inform all of our work. Our circle has been also told that we are primarily for education, for training, and they are right now, they're rocking the table and focusing on the table and answering all of our questions. So the last Sunday night, one question after another, everybody had questions, and they were answering all the questions, personal questions about life, about the afterlife. And so we were getting the messages, and we asked them, is it going to be easier if we bring in somebody who's starting their own circle, if they bring them into our circle and let them experience this? Will it be easier for them to go back to their circle and have a good circle experience? And they said yes. And then we asked, would it be possible for us as individuals to go into another circle that was just beginning, and could we then, because of our energy in that other circle, help them to develop more quickly? And they said yes. So it seems like this effort to educate, to train, to help other people is a significant effort, and we're experiencing that too in our circle. Rob, I'm sure, can answer some more questions about that.
Yeah, I had a question about your states of consciousness, Gary. When you're developing, perhaps earlier in your development, what that was like to kind of come in and out of your trance state, or have you always been consistent in your trance state, or do you often awake and then are pushed back into a trance? Or can you talk about the development of your trance with the development of your ectoplasm?
So with my normal trance, when I started with trance, I used to do it with Abraham, who's my healing guide. So when I started trance with him, I used to be able to hear everything that was going on. I then stopped for a year or so, and then when I went back to it, I no longer hear what's going on. From the whole physical side, I've never had awareness of what's going on. Sometimes they've apparently done experiments where they have brought me back and you can hear me talking while they're doing phenomena, but I have no recollection of it afterwards. What I do know from the recordings and what I've been told is a lot of times when you see me do trance or other people do trance, you'll see that the spirit world will use certain words over and over, or they'll use the same phrase over and over. And these are triggers for the medium's mind. So my team know if my mind begins to interfere or I start to come back, they know to use the right word, which is the trigger to my brain, to get me back out the way. And what I've heard from the recordings as well is my team's very good at, when I do begin to interfere, to pause it and to get that control back, or where we've had in the past, actually, and I think that all the time I've worked, we've had about 10 blank public seances purely because they couldn't get my mind out of the way. What I have found though is whenever they do something new, it does have a huge effect on my physical body. So I'm normally left quite sick. Whenever we've had our scientific weeks, they're doing new things and we have a lot of sittings. So they tend to leave me quite ill. Not just during the week, but afterwards as well. But awareness, from my mental mind, I have no awareness. I know going into the state, and then I know time has passed. But sometimes, even though I'm aware afterwards, sometimes it's not till the next morning that I actually have any memory of possibly speaking to someone the night before. Fascinating. And where did your how did the, because it was interesting to hear about the light, and in Alec Harris's book they talk about how the ectoplasm is illuminated. Some of the first phenomena he got, it was illuminated, and it was a surprise to the sitters. And so we don't hear a lot about that now. Yeah. And it's fascinating that we hear that the light was illuminated in the cabinet when they were developing that. So I thought that was an interesting connection. One thing a lot of people don't talk about with ectoplasm is, so ectoplasm itself is black. It's coming inside our body. So and that's where, when you see a table move around in the dark and stuff, you're not seeing the ectoplasm because it is black. So if you've ever been in a seance and even though you're sitting in the dark, you've experienced the phenomena of dark and in dark. So although you're sitting in the dark, all of a sudden, it's got dark in here, even though we were already sitting in the dark. So when you think you're sitting in the dark, you still have a load of light photons in the room. So spirit will take those light photons And that's what makes the ectoplasm either white or self-luminous. Or if you have enough, like say a red light or a blue light, and they have enough exposure to it, and enough exposure to the vibration of that light, they can then take on colors into the ectoplasm.
We have had red ectoplasm from the red light.
Some mediums find that they do better in certain lights. So I know a very good transfiguration medium, Gordon Garforth. He used to work a lot in blue light, but he then found when he swapped over to green light, his phenomena got a lot stronger with his transfiguration. So we find that certain phenomena tends to work better for my team in blue light or red light.
Yeah, Rob, I don't know if you were awake for this last Sunday. We asked them, should we turn on a red light? And they said no for us. So for our team right now, at this position, we are not going to be using any lights. We're still going to be in the dark. They've told us to do that. And I imagine it's because of our development. And of course, Rob is developing in the cabinet right now.
So you don't tell me everything, Craig. You don't tell me everything.
Yeah, we don't tell you all those things. The most interesting.
Yeah, I asked for a debriefing afterwards, and they're like, "Oh, this and that."
Same old stuff. Same old stuff.
The less you know, the better.
That's
Don't
it.
worry about it.
So we ought to tell them about. There's a dog. We ought to tell them about the interesting phenomena we had with Alex. So the first time we had Rob's son come into the circle was 3 Sundays ago. And immediately, as soon as he sat in the circle, they started taking control of his body. So they were making his arms do things and making his legs do things and rocking him back and forth in the chair right away, the first trip. And so then on Monday nights, Rob and Alex sat in his room while we had the Zoom circle meeting, where we have the circle meeting with all the participants in Zoom. And during that evening, Rob, you ought to tell the story because I haven't heard the whole thing. We haven't met yet this evening.
Pardon if my dogs start barking again. Yeah, Alex came and sat down, and they took over his body again. And he was able. They were using. They went from sort of gross motor function to finer motor function, and they were able to answer questions by clapping. By him clapping, and it was the strangest thing. And of course, I was skeptical, but there's no reason for Alex to put it on. He's 19 years old. He really hasn't had much interest in this except cursory, and hearing from me. And so he seemed to, Spirit seemed to. He was completely open for Spirit to take over his body. And answer questions and move about in his chair. If we asked him, can you pound the leg on the ground, or can you do this or that? He was actually hitting his feet on the ground faster than I think I could if I just tried. So they were doing some really unusual things with him. They indicated that perhaps trance would be something that he would be well suited for.
Yeah, that's what the team said. Yeah, so we asked the team what his mediumship would be, and they said trance mediumship.
Trance puppetry. You need to be careful that there's no camera. Yeah. Be careful there's no camera.
Yeah. So Inge, the trance puppetry.
Yeah.
Trance puppetry.
That's what it is.
We've had our other circle member who's had what she said was like marionette hands.
Mm.
So her hands would go up and down.
I have some in my circle. I have some in my circle the same.
And we had another one that they slammed her hands on the table and just took over the body.
Mm. It's interesting when the famous seance happened with Gary. The following week, Susan Feiler posted a post on her site, and she said, "Oh, we had a seance with Warren, and they turned on the red light. They took him out of the cabinet. They stood him up, and whatever the feather is, yellow feather or whoever works with Warren, said to the circle, you know what? Now we can do with him whatever we like."
Yeah.
So they have been very much trying to say, guys, you need to actually think out of the box. You need to move forward. You need to give us control, blah, blah. But nobody listens because everybody knows already, obviously.
Yeah. Well, we're naive, so we're going to listen to anything. You know.
Very good. Very good. That's all we need to do. We just need to follow the instructions and say, what can you do? You know, just
Yeah,
tell us.
we're open.
That's all
We're
we
open.
need to do.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
we
just
begin that.
trust.
Yeah, every circle meeting, we begin with our invocation and a prayer of protection, and we say at the beginning of the meeting, you are free to do whatever with us, whatever you wish to do, and we are open to it.
Yeah, I think it needs to go back. That's the big difference we have with circles now and with circles in the past. I always thought that the circles in the past, it was because of, you know, all the electronics and all the bloody waves here and there and everywhere. And it is actually not. It's just the circles. The circles now have internet. The circles have sheep mentality. They follow without questioning. They can't go anywhere. You know, most of the physical mediums have no home circle. So to move forward, like what I do with Garry now, where they use this circle, they utilize the energy, they use mirroring, they use, you know, the bioresonance and harmonic resonance, and, you know, they work all together to make it stronger and stronger. They had that in the olden days. It was easy in the olden days. The cities come together on a Sunday, nobody is an ass, they all just sit and are happy to speak to their loved ones. Awesome. Today, no, nothing.
True. It's
My
true.
little rant, sorry. But it's true. We need to wake up to the fact they can give us so much, but we are the ones who are blocking it. We are the ones who say, oh, I know better. It should be like Helen Duncan did it. And then find the same cities like Helen Duncan has, and you can go. Whatever.
I have a question about Gary's ectoplasm sitter's voice box. You mentioned that, and that you said it was Gary's ectoplasm, and then the sitter's voice box was used. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, we have a few people in our circle who also have the ability, like Gary's body has, the same faculties like Gary's body has. So what they're actually doing is they're mirroring a faculty within the sitters. Like, say, somebody might have trance ability, sits for trance. Karen has very much physical ability in regards to mirroring really what Gary's faculties are. And like you said, you have a 19-year-old son. I have a 19-year-old son as well who has ectoplasmic possibilities. And so they used him once when we had a problem with light, and the light came on, and they had taken Garry out of the cabinet in the middle of the room, and they were having ectoplasm coming out from, you know, every orifice, out of his palms, everywhere, and the light went on. And so when I turned the light back off, and then we heard Abraham saying, oh, I checked the medium, and then he goes, oh, he will live. That's what he says, he will live. And then, but then Garry was sick, but also they could not produce any more ectoplasm via his body. And so after 3 weeks, they asked for my son to be put in a cabinet next to Garry, and they used the bioresonance of my son, the etheric of my son, to then encourage Gary's makeup to become able to allow again to use ectoplasm. And I never had heard that before. And I said, I thought it maybe was the cell memory of Gary's body to say, yeah, no, shit, this is really dangerous. We're not doing this anymore. But then Jimmy said it was actually at one level in his subconscious, he was feeling this is not safe. It can kill me, which it very well can. So, yeah, so that helped. So I think they work with the circles. They work very much with that. They have, that's the reason they need circles. They take faculties within the sitters, because you can sit for physical for 20 years. If it's not in your faculty, it's still not going to happen. And this is things people need to learn, you know, like work with what your faculties are. Let them build on what you have within your blueprint or in your etheric. And so they mirror them. And I think the system goes, it is like they mirror the medium, say, to enhance the phenomena in both of you. And they enhance the development in both of you. So the week we had now, like they were saying, actually we want to work with the circle, we want to utilize the circle more, because as we go forward and work in the olden ways, like bringing loved ones into the room, it is now time that we utilize the circle as well and bring more phenomena forward and develop more with you, because they say if we would just want education just with our medium, that's not worth our while, you know, working on one. We want to work with more. And that's the reason you need to understand that it is so important that you have circles and that you know, are willing to be also developed, because the circle will be developed at the same time. There is so much to learn. There is so much to learn. It's awesome.
Also, just to quickly add, one of the requests I have from the spirit team was to experience the difference between the blueprint and the medium's physical form. And they actually gave me a demonstration of this when the full materialization, the last one, drew near to Karen and I were sitting next to her. I felt a pressure on my foot as though somebody had stood on my foot, and I couldn't work out why the materialization would have missed my foot being there. And the sensation I've got, though it felt weighted, it felt more like the thinness of a hand, so just a pressure more than anything, and not quite as wide as an actual foot was. But my first interpretation was that's a foot. Now, as we were drawing the sitting to a close, I'm sitting there in the dark, and all of a sudden I'm feeling 3 pressures on my feet. And then Jimmy mentioned, he said, that's the difference. He said, the last one was the actual medium's foot. Now, Inge, if you can explain the first part, how they managed to do the
other pressure.
Yes, please.
Okay, I need to read what Jimmy was saying actually at the time.
What they did was they coated.
Oh, here, he said, this is what the medium's foot feels like. We had to do this experiment very quickly. Partly was that the medium's mind is interfering, because though we work on a subconscious level, at one level, the medium's form knows what we're doing. And so in his subconscious mind, he has forbidden us to use the body out of it. Sorry, Garry, I wasn't going to say this publicly.
No, but what they did was they explained that they coated it, didn't they? And
now how they do the form. So that is a different story altogether, though. How they did the form, because of the weight, they were saying how they did the personality work with the veil was that they used the etheric, the blueprint of the medium. They coat it with ectoplasm, which gives it then the physical structure and the weight. Is that what you meant? Is that
yes, and therefore it turns it, because I think I then followed it with a question, so then it becomes matter, and he says yes.
Yes, it becomes a physical structure.
And there was
that is something what I want to go on with the next time I have a chance, to ask about, you know, the materializations, if they use the etheric form, like what did they use for Katie King, for instance? Because they checked her heart, they checked her pulse. Was that the etheric of the medium? Because they say, oh, we could see the medium's body laying there. Yeah, but they don't need the medium's body. They just need the etheric blueprint. They need the outline, which they then build on. like there is a tall man who comes in Garry's seances, and even in that video you can see it, like the tall man will stand like this, say for instance, and then we give him a luminous balls, and he will hold the balls in his hand, and then like one hand becomes really big, one becomes really small, or people feel the chest, and one side, you know, either one side is hair, one is not, one is full hair, one is not, as he goes along. Yeah. And so one time Eddie was complaining, saying they're always men. What is this about? So the next seance, he goes, "Oh my God, Inge, there are boobs." So obviously they are listen what we are talking about. You see, so but they use they show us how the form grows, how he becomes smaller, and as his passing was via a bullet wound, so he has had people in the circle in a seance come and put their hand into his stomach, into the bullet wound, you know, so we know how he passed. So there's so many interesting things they can do. And we had the etheric form, like Garry in the cabinet, the etheric form walking out, sees through the whole cabinet and back with a cord, like they just created the cord to show us. And I was so excited. I was going, my God, Garry is dead at this moment, you know. His form moved out, he's done. And it was just so mind-blowing for me. But yeah, but most of the cities go, oh, yeah, we don't get it. Okay, fair enough. There's interesting stuff. Interesting learning. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, I want to say how wonderful this was, how wonderful the presentation was, how exciting these developments are. I really wish I did live closer. You wouldn't be able to get rid of me.
Would be okay.
But thank you so much. It's absolutely fascinating, and I really wish I was closer and could get involved. Thank you so much for this.
No worries. Yeah, we need to do a lot more learning and much more openness, and just bring up anything. We like it or we don't, you know, like people don't understand, so they don't understand. You know, not your time to understand yet.
Inge, that's wonderful. And as always, you know, we so much enjoy hearing you talk. You're learning many, many things. You're being the conduit who's bringing them to us. Garry, thank you very much for your presence and for what you do. This is an opening up of humankind, and we're watching this door open through what it is that you're learning. And so we encourage you, whatever we can do to disseminate what it is that you're doing. And you're also a lot of help to us as developing circles, because we are learning things, and Rob is developing, and we need your help. So thank you very much for what you've done.